There you go.
All right. So you should see a screen now that says public expenditures. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Just kind of going through the basics of what makes a valid public expenditure, beyond kind of the regular required expenses that a township needs to make in road maintenance and those kinds of things. If you have any questions throughout, just send it in the chat. I can see it right here, so I'll try to get to those as I'm going through, and if not, I can touch back at the end and see where we're at. So, okay, so when it comes to public expenditures, today we're going to talk about the standard criteria for valid public expenditures in order to what you need in order to make a valid expenditure, in order to make sure that you're following all the rules and regulations of spending public money. And then we're going to go over what a public purpose is and what that means, a list of authorized expenditures. Oh, my name is Maddie, for everyone who doesn't know me already. This is the Association of Townships from Township Tuesday. Sorry, I didn't welcome everybody to that, just to make it clear. But for today's agenda, we're going to go over the standard criteria for public expenditures, the public purpose doctrine, any authorized expenditures by statute, and kind of go through a list of what those are, donations, when we're allowed to make those and when we're not allowed to make those, fundraising, the consequences of making invalid expenditures, and when it would be appropriate to seek the advice of counsel or legal advice. So in order to lawfully spend public funds, the expense must have a public purpose and specific or implied authority from statute. So Minnesota's constitution allows taxation for public purposes, but generally forbids local tax for private purposes. It also prohibits towns from donating money to aid an individual, association, or corporation unless that expense is for a public purpose and authorized by statute. Town spending authority is limited to those specifically described in statute. So it's important to know what those are. In order to spend town funds, the board must find that statute and kind of be able to point to that in order to make that contribution. So before the board makes any decision on public expenses or spending public money, they must first find the authority to do so and ensure that that authority is for a public purpose. So what is a public purpose? So ultimately, the definition of public purpose is decided by the courts. And the public purpose doctrine is based on constitutional provisions that public funds can only be used for public purposes. The meaning of public purpose is constantly shifting and evolving, and whether something is a public purpose is, again, ultimately a decision of the courts. But in the past, the Supreme Court has followed a more liberal approach, generally finding public purpose when the activity will benefit the community as a whole body. The activity is directly related to the functions of government, and the activity does not have as its primary objective the benefit of a private interest. The courts find that an incidental benefit of a private interest does not necessarily deprive the spending activity if the overall primary purpose of the expenditure is for the benefit of the public. So if somebody happens to benefit from the expense, but overall the public is the main beneficiary, then that's usually okay in those circumstances. Public benefits usually include things like public health, safety, general welfare, security, prosperity, and contentment. So those interests should be considered as motivators in all financial action taken by towns boards, as they are the ones who are elected to act in the best interest of the town. So whenever you're trying to make an expense, you'll want to make sure that those are the motivators behind spending that public money. And even if contributions are statutorily authorized and you find that it is for a public purpose, town boards should ultimately decide whether the town should make that expense and whether it's in the best interest of the town. So even if you can and it's authorized, towns know what is in the best interest of, or town boards know what's in the best interest of the town and should make a decision based off of that in general. But overall, the courts focus on whether the expenditure benefits the community as a whole and relates to the functions of government. All right, so in order to authorize a contribution, each statute has its own set of conditions and requirements that need to be met as well. These can include things like elector authorization or written agreements or a number of other requirements depending on the intended contribution and the statute that goes along with it. So those can vary depending on where you want to spend that money and what's required. If the board looks at the statute and cannot meet all of the required conditions of that statute, the board is not authorized to make that contribution. So it's important to take a look at the statute and see what it says in the directions on how to legally make that expense. So if the expense is for a public purpose, there's a statutory authority and the town can meet all of the conditions of the expense. The next question the board needs to ask itself is whether the expense should be made. Again, it's a policy question and the board should answer that always in the best interest of the town and keeping their community and the needs of the people that they represent in mind. So next I'll go over kind of a list of authorized expenditures in statute. It's a long one, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but here's just kind of a general list of authorized expenditures that exist in statute. And if any of these are jumping out at you or you have questions on those, feel free to reach out to me and we can discuss it further. But some of them are pretty straightforward. For example, a county park, the statute just says a town board may contribute to any county park. And that's pretty straightforward, but things like entertainment, there needs to be a petition upon positive vote of the electors, or the town board may levy a tax to create a fund to employ a band or orchestra or a chorus for town purposes. So there are different requirements for each of these statutes, and you'll just want to take a look at what each one is when you're considering them individually. And they all have different requirements. For example, health, the electors can authorize the town board to contract with a nonprofit organization for up to $10,000 to provide health services. They all just have different requirements, and it's important to know what each one of those are if you're interested in entering into those agreements or making those expenses. All right, and then donations. So the Minnesota Attorney General's office has long held that gifts lack consideration and hence lack a public purpose. So when it comes to deciding whether you can donate or make a gift, it's generally not allowed. And in most circumstances, public entities have no authority to give away public funds as a donation. Towns should consider if they want to give a donation, they should consider whether they are authorized to do that under statute and whether it is for a public purpose. And that's usually not the case. And it's usually not something that's going to be successful. So it's typically not available to towns as an option. However, a town board can accept a donation of real or personal property and maintain the property for the benefit of its citizens according to the terms described by the donor. And in order to do that, they should pass a resolution by 2/3 majority with the terms of the donor within the resolution so that everyone's aware as to how those funds are to be used. And Matt has a sample resolution on our website that can be used for this purpose. I believe it's under F 1500. So if you're looking for a sample that could kind of lead the way and guide you on making these contributions or accepting these donations, that resolution will be really helpful. A town board may also lease or convey its land without consideration to the state or any other political subdivision, and they can transfer property for a nominal fee or without consideration to a public corporation for public use. And the Attorney General's office has issued an opinion stating that personal property also includes cash. So towns could give cash to another public corporation as well, but that's between corporations. That's not donating to a private party. And a lawful gambling organization can also expend gross profits from their lawful gambling operation by contributing to a town. These are considered a lawful purpose for the use of gambling proceeds, so those can also be accepted as donations. All right, and then fundraising. So I've had some questions on fundraising, and in general, townships and their departments cannot hold fundraisers or solicit donations. So you can accept donations, but you can't go around asking for donations or create or hold a fundraiser. If the town needs to raise money or needs finances to obtain the necessary goods or services for their community, their options are tax, borrow, or receive donations or grants. So they cannot solicit donations and they can't hold fundraisers. So that's an important thing to know. All right, so the consequences of invalid expenditures. First, a big consequence is taxpayer lawsuits. These are expensive, and the board would take on significant expenses defending themselves. MATIC covers some liability expenses in terms of defense, but they do not cover fines or fees that the individual board member would receive for potentially violating these laws. And personal liability could fall on the individual board members as they have a fiduciary duty to spend the public's money for a public purpose. And it's important to pay attention to how you're using public funds. It also may result in a non-compliance finding by the state auditor. And this could result in future special audits and public embarrassment for the town going forward. So it's really important to pay attention to where this money is being put and how it's spent. And I think probably the most important consequence of invalid expenditures would be losing the trust of the public. As leaders of the community, it's important that board members maintain the trust of the townspeople and their community, and improper use of public funds is a very quick way to lose that kind of trust. And then excuse me. Finally, another consequence that could result in invalid expenditures would be changes in law. Substantial violations and continued misuse of public funds could encourage legislators to seek stricter laws for townships, which is something that we certainly don't want going forward. All right, and then when to seek legal advice. If you're considering whether an expense has a valid or public purpose or is authorized by statute, or how any of the previously mentioned authorities might apply to your town situation, the board should consult with their town's attorney or call Matt and see if we can point out the statute to you. We are here to help. I don't, unfortunately, have a powdered wig, such as the lovely lady in the picture, but we can still point you in the right direction. With some public expenditures, there are procedural requirements that need to be followed in order to make that expense, as we discussed. So it's really important to know step by step how to do that. And some expenses even have conflicting interpretations on how they function. So getting the advice of an attorney who can advise you on how to move forward is really important. In any situation, if you don't know, if you have questions, it's really important to consult with your town's attorney or Matt, especially when it comes to spending public money, because it's a really tender topic and it's an easy way to lose the trust of your community. So if you have a question, when in doubt, ask your attorney, and you will be relieved to know that you're either right or you were wrong. So you'll never regret asking your attorney. All right, and that's all I have for you today. I hope you guys have a great day. I don't know if there's any other announcements. Oops.
Yep, Maddie, I was going to just comment, just
Sure.
remind everybody about spring short courses, March
Sure.
18th through April 5th. We are going to be having voting during that time too. So encourage everyone to come on over to your local venue, so that there are going to be 15 of them, and so hopefully you can find one nearby you so you can get your voting in, and we can get all that accomplished. It should be a really good turnout. So we're pretty excited about that. The next thing is the Township Day at the Capitol, April 8th and 9th. And and I know that there are some bus routes that are going to hit some of your areas. You can check the website and find out more about that information, or you can also call your district director, and they should be able to assist you with that as well. That was all the main things that I wanted to mention. Graham, I don't know if you had anything. Heather, I know Lori's not on today. Any comments from any of you, or of course the audience too?
Nothing from me, but nice to see all of your faces, and look forward to seeing you at spring short courses.
Perfect. Well, hearing nothing else, we'll adjourn today's meeting, but thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. And of course, we'll see you at the short courses. Take care all.